Good morning. Welcome to Mid-Michigan College. I'm Chris Pellerito with Mid, and I'll start it this way. Ernie Harwell, longtime voice of the Detroit Tigers, it's offered by many people, but it's noted to have come from him. 90% of success is just showing up. So good for you. You've made the start, and we welcome you. I've had a number of instructors indicate their interest in joining us today, and it's because they care about you, and we do too. You'll find that in a few. Just so you know, Mid-Michigan College, when people ask me, I'm tempted to say, well, it's right here, of course, but just so long as you're clear, Mid-Michigan College, we're on our Mount Pleasant campus, about 5 miles from our friends at CMU, and we have a campus about a half an hour north of here, up in Harrison. It has its quaint rustic charm, and we're proud of what we do with that. But it's not about us today, it's about you. And before I get into introducing our guests, or I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, I'll share this piece with you too. The power to be strong and the wisdom to be wise, all those things will come to you in time. That time starts right now. One of my favorite songs. You've got the opportunity to hear from some very sharp folks. I have an education background. I started as an educator in 1983 when I was 12. And so this one is especially interesting and exciting to me, and it's important. So I'm glad we're going to have this conversation. I will now pass it along to our guests at the table, but I'll quickly mention, behind the camera, Noah, our video guru. Thank you, Noah, you rock. You can't see her. She's off camera running things in a wonderful, beautiful way. My way smarter than I am colleague, Beth, is happy to take questions you might submit this morning. So feel free to do so via our YouTube channel, and we will address them if they come in this morning. Okay. It's not any particular order, but if it's okay with you, I'd like to start at the far end with Judy. Just a brief introduction of who you are, and we'll rock from there.
My name is Judy Crawford, and I work here at Mid-Michigan College as a mentor advisor. I've been here 10 years.
Judy, briefly, what does that mean, mentor advisor?
Yes, mentor advisor, a rose by any other name will smell as sweet. So counselor, mentor, helper, speed bump smoother, hurdle helper overer. You know, I'm here to help explain what college is and help you get to your goal, whatever that might be. Whether it's a little bit of time at college, sometime, full time, I'm just here to help you and find out what you'd like to do.
Good deal. Amy?
So my name is Amy Bond, and I work with the Great Start to Quality Central Resource Center, and I am a quality improvement coach. So I get to go into daycares, preschools, child care facilities, and I get to work with license exempt providers, and I get to help them do their job better and improve quality for young children, usually ages birth through 5, but I work with children birth through age 8.
Amy, you have some background from CMU as well?
I do. I, in a previous role, was a field placement coordinator. I've taught at CMU. I've done a lot of work with infants and toddlers, and then I did some academic advising with early childhood education as well.
Outstanding. Tara?
Hello, I'm Tara Mager, and I am a thought partner for educational leaders in Clare and Gladwin County, primarily supporting superintendent and those administrators who work day to day with kiddos in the region.
Kiddos, is that the vernacular? That's not the, you didn't learn that term in grad school. Kiddos.
Perhaps, do you want me to quantify it?
No. Heavens no, don't quantify it. Rick?
I'm Rick Seebeck. I'm the school superintendent at Gladwin Community Schools, and I'm right now 3/4 of the way through my 18th year in that role.
Wow. Okay. And just for the record, most superintendents, that's about 4 times longer than their typical stay. So you are, in some sense, the Lou Gehrig of superintendents?
I don't know if I'd say that.
And I don't know if they know who Lou Gehrig is. Okay, let's jump right into it. And I love for each of you to touch on this, but again, you don't have to. But I want to start with a high hard one. No, not a high hard one. It seems to me that education there's many pathways, and that's good. In a lot of ways, it's a vocation. It's not a job. But also, the trick is you don't get paid nearly what you're worth. And if someone said, well, hey, you know, they chose that path, my response often is, well, hey, yes, but what other occupation has 25 clients at a time? So why would somebody want to go into education? I said it was a hard one.
I guess I'll get us started. The people find their way to education for a couple of different reasons, and it's important for you young folks that are looking at possibly becoming a teacher or otherwise working in education, whether it's a counselor, paraprofessional, or any other role for that matter. It really it's a quality of life job. So if you look at it from the most pragmatic standpoint, meaning get all the altruistic, I just love kids, I want to touch the future. If you get past all that, it's a quality of life job. Chris put it very well when he said you're not going to get paid what you're worth, and that's true, you're just not. Because good educators are going to work far more hours than they'll ever get paid for. That's just the reality of it. And you're going to work those hours because of your passion and all of those utopic ideas about touching the future. But from the most pragmatic standpoint, it truly is a quality of life job. So pick a place that you want to live and be an educator there, because the job affords you the opportunity to not live in a community, but to be part of a community. And teachers get to do that just because of the way that the job is structured, and quite frankly, because you do have much more free time in the summer than typical jobs have. You don't get the summers off, but you get a lot of free time in the summer. And that time that you have is time to become involved, and most teachers do. So why would anybody want to become involved in education? It's because they want to be part of a community as opposed to just living in a community.
That was great. That was good. Want to add anything to it?
I like the phrase, the quality of life job.
Yeah.
Very true. In my role here as an advisor, I meet so many people from so many different backgrounds. I would imagine that is what being a teacher is like. We look at advising as a teaching, kind of teaching, educating students on what college is like, educating them on how to advocate for themselves, how to find out the resources that they need to get to the goals they want, and really getting to know each individual person and helping them. It's, you may have 25 clients at a time in a classroom, but I know educators look at those individuals. That's maybe 25 people in a room, but they know something specific and care about each of them individually, for
Good
sure.
point.
I think also with education, it's a way to take a hobby and put it into a career. So if you love books, maybe you are a literacy specialist when it comes to being in a classroom. If you love art, maybe you're an art teacher. If you love electronics and technology, maybe you're a computer teacher. So it really also is a way to take something that you love and feel passionate about and teach it to a younger generation who can also pick up that passion as well.
Excellent.
And I guess I would just echo Rick's comments. This is one of the few professions when you can really embed and become embodied in the community, and that really has no value. And the impact, as our other panelists mentioned, on the youth within that community is profound, regardless of whether you have 25 clients or 150, which is quite frequently what you may impact daily on a high school level. So again, just knowing that power behind your passion and being able to support and lift up those in the community is really without a price.
That's excellent. I feel like we're playing home run derby and they all just nailed it, like out of the park, which just puts more pressure on the rest of this conversation. Tara, I'd like you to start with this next one. No pressure. But let me give you my background for a moment. March is reading month. I went into Carly Cote, a second grade, third grade classroom. She's got nearly 30 third graders in there. I couldn't do it for 4 hours a day. She does it 40 hours plus a week. I'm just flabbergasted at how talented she was in working with those kids. So here's my question to you. You may equip all these students that are hearing this today with one thing on their utility belt, just to go forward if they continue down the path in education. But I want you to consider this for a moment. Strong conviction, principles, a credo to live by, creativity, adaptability, problem solving. What would you choose? What one thing would you gift them for their utility belt as they step into the classroom for the next 20 years?
I feel like you're setting me up for failure by having me pick just one.
Yep. Just one.
I guess if I had to pick from that list.
And it doesn't have to be from
okay.
that list.
I think I can't wait to hear what Rick's response is to this. I would think resiliency. And maybe that might not be the most profound that you would think I would respond with. Others have already mentioned this. This job is a life that has the ability to impact so many other lives, and that can be a heavy load to bear. And so you mentioned a lot of words that I would want one to embody as an educator. You have to be creative when you're in the room, be able to problem solve, quickly adapt, display empathy, and really have a true understanding of the being that you're trying to touch, not the subject you're trying to teach or the kid that just happens to be present. And to do all of that takes a tremendous amount of resiliency, because there are going to be many, many rewarding moments, but many, many moments of failure. And your ability to overcome that failure and help that child will lead to a long, joyous career.
That it will.
Who else?
I'd say curiosity, and I think of that on the part of the educator and the one being educated. There are going to be subjects in your life that you will have to study and slog through, and maybe that is not your first choice of what you'd like to study, but it's necessary. So if you maintain a sense of curiosity for the duration of that semester or trimester or school year, you may find out something that you didn't know. You may find out something about yourself that, oh, I can approach a subject that I'm not really that interested in, but I can still be successful in it. And just, can I also add another, like a sense of wonder?
I noticed Tara snuck in a couple extra answers,
good.
so
I
go
was
ahead.
keeping score. So just that sense of wonder or curiosity. There's so much to know and learn, and part of what I tell students is knowing what you want to do for goals. Your not liking list might be way bigger than your I really like list. So if you can mark things off that may not be the pathway that you want to pursue, that's just as valuable as finding things that you do enjoy to do. So stay curious, express wonder, be open-minded. I got a billion of them, so.
That's a big utility belt.
Yeah.
I would say patience, because things don't happen quickly. You might be working with a young child, teaching them to read, and one child might get it very, very quickly, and one child it might take the whole year. And no matter how quickly you want things to happen, amazing things can happen with time. And so when you want to see change, or you want to see that you've made a difference, it might be over the course of a 30-year career, and seeing what you meant to the community and what you meant to the children in your classroom. It might be a relationship that you form with a parent of the child that you're caring for, things like that. So I think there are, of course, many, many, many that could go with that, but one that really stands out to me is patience.
Rick, you're batting cleanup.
Oh no!
Here we go.
We're all in trouble. Good news is the bases are loaded. So
Yes,
if I
indeed.
happen to hit it, we're to continue that baseball analogy, right? We're gonna be in great shape.
Have a swing.
All right, I would say probably perseverance would be the word I would use. You're not going to get what you think you deserve most of the time. That's just the reality of any job, but that is certainly the reality in education. So you have to persevere in the face of that feeling that you're doing, and nothing seems to be happening, because that does happen in education. But what you need to understand is that it is happening. But it happens in a way that we can't see. We don't get to look inside of somebody's head. It's not like being an automobile mechanic where you throw open the hood and you can look in there and figure out what's wrong or figure out what's right. We can't do that in education. But you're doing that job. You're fixing that mind. You're helping that child learn. You just don't get to see it in the truest sense of the word like a mechanic or even a doctor would. But you have to persevere. You have to know that your craft is sound and that what you're doing is having an impact. And that impact might not be today. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be 5 years from now. A quick, great story. I've been doing this quite some time, and I was talking to a young lady in the grocery store, and she had a baby on her hip, and she was telling me how wonderful her life was as a mother, and I'm thinking to myself, where's this going, And I had her as a student, and she said, I'm a good mom because of your science class. And I'm like, I'm trying to make the connection, right? How are you a good mother because of my science class? And she said to me, you taught me how to care. And I said, oh. And that was pretty profound. I was thinking she might say, you taught me how to field identify an ash tree leaf, based on its margins or something. And what she said was, you taught me how to care. And I said, really? And she said, because you cared. And I thought, that's pretty neat, Yeah. So I had an impact on somebody's life, and the impact I had was on that baby's life, because that baby had a mother who felt that she had been well prepared to be a mother by a science teacher. Right. Is that crazy? But that's why you have to persevere, because you're not going to see it. I didn't see it for 15, 18, it might have been 20 years from the day that I had that young lady in my classroom. So you're not going to see the impact that you're having, sometimes way down the road. So in the day-to-day slog through that classroom where you're wondering and you're questioning and you're thinking, why in the world did I ever do this for $35,000 a year? You need to know that you are making a huge difference, and you might not see it right away, so you have to persevere in order to get to the point where you've made that difference.
Well done. Okay. We've each been to restaurants, yes? Good. You ever go into a restaurant and not be offered a menu? Have you ever gone into a restaurant you've never been in and you have zero idea what the options are to order? Each of us, likely you've felt this or experienced this too. I meet students often, 17, 18-year-olds, and it's clear in conversation, it's not that they don't know anything. It's not that they don't want to choose. It's often that they just don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what's on the menu. So I'm wondering if we could take a couple of minutes and just briefly touch on, and Amy, Judy, if you'd lead this, that'd be wonderful, but just briefly touch on, there are a million pathways in education. I don't have to be a teacher to be involved with education. I'll leave it at that. One of you want to start?
One of the questions that when I was doing advising, I would always ask an individual is, do you want to work for children or with children? Knowing that they love children and they want to be a part of a child's life. And I have held jobs over the years working for and working with, and I have found great success in both. But I think it's important as an individual who comes in and says, you know what, I love kids, I know I want to work with kids, having that thought process. So do you want to be in a classroom with a child? Do you want to be, if you're saying that you love children, do you want to be a librarian? Do you want to be doing story time? Do you want to be doing all of the things on the day-to-day operation? Or do you want to be supporting the people that are doing that? Do you want to be a coach like myself who is helping other individuals get to do those things? Do you want to be, working in as a clerical support in the front of a elementary school, middle school, high school? Do you want to be a supporter within the community for education? So maybe you're working for an organization that supports schools. Do you want to be on a school board? Do you want to do those types of things that allow you the opportunity to maybe not directly be with children, but you're supporting education in a lot of ways? So I think one of those things is really to ask yourself, when you say, I love children, how do you see yourself showing up for them every day?
Excellent.
That's great. I mean, there's so many pathways you can take, as you both have mentioned, and I love that thought about for and with, because sometimes I think of my sister, who's a teacher for Grand Rapids Public Schools, and she has taught for over 15 years, and she's been in the kindergarten, she's been through 6th grade, she's done so many different things. She's been a literacy guide, she's been started as a parapro, now has her own classroom, has co-taught, has done all the different grades. And I think of the students who come to me and they want to do from birth to age pre-K, or they want secondary education, or they don't know what they want, who or what they want to teach. I was an English major in college, and the assumption was you're going to be a teacher. And I knew that I didn't feel 100% comfortable in a formal classroom, but I knew I wanted to educate somehow. I knew that I wanted to, my two favorite things in the world are talking and solving puzzles and reading. I said 2 things, but I gave 3. So
Math is not one of your favorite things
no,
in the world.
it's not math. So that was one of those classes I maintained curiosity about, though, and I did get through it, and I passed. So, but I probably never repeated it again. But sorry, math instructors. But the pathway is as individualized for you as it is for the people that you may be educating, whether it's in a classroom, whether it's one-on-one across from a desk, whether it's working with other educators, with children, with parents, with groups of people, with agencies. There's just a lot. The state of Michigan has, really revamped its whole thought process as far as cognition levels and behavioral levels and what works best when you're educating people in that path. So, be open-minded to what that might be, because there may be a position that isn't created yet that you would be perfectly suitable to be the person to spearhead and initiate that. I think everyone on the panel has probably been in that capacity at some point or another, where you saw a need and then you personally filled that need or found someone to fill that need.
Tara, you want to add anything to this?
Well, Rick and I probably share similar sentiments about this, and Amy referenced, I like the phrase with and, supporting. Together, through our organization, we spend a lot of time supporting the adults that work with the children, and that's where Rick and I partner quite frequently. And as Amy referenced, there are a tremendous amount of occupational opportunities in a school setting. Rick mentioned earlier about the quality of life. We employ occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists. We have a whole business office that does anything from payroll down to advanced budgeting. And their lives are a lot different than the intensity that comes from the private sector. Again, going back to Rick's comments earlier, during the summer, there's a lot more flexibility in the schedule, even for those that don't directly support kids all the time. Many organizations are moving to more hybrid work schedules, which allow some individuals to work from home as well as on site. And so the list goes on and on. There's so much power behind working with children. Not only do you get to see the results 30, 40 years from now, but the smiles daily are really
Wasn't
hard,
that long.
are hard to wrap your brain around. So I just echo, if you're interested, my guess is with working with kids that there's an occupation that might land you in a school, and I would strongly consider it.
Well, what I would say, and this will be quick, Chris.
I gotcha.
So, but Chris started this with an analogy with an analogy about going to a restaurant and not getting a menu. And what I would tell you to do is just go to the restaurant. That's what you got to do. You get there, right? Once you're in the restaurant, you're well on your way, or you wouldn't be tuning into this forum. But get to the restaurant and then see what's there. Watch what other people are eating. Do the same thing with education as a job. Get a job in education, and then figure it out. Chris and I were talking before I came here today. I am going to be doing this forum, obviously. I'm going to leave here. I'm going to drive and do another forum very similar to this with kids that are in high school hoping to be community leaders someday. I will run from that meeting back to my school district in Gladwin, where I will drive a school bus to take our boys baseball team to Standish. I will get back from that, and I will be the assistant coach to our varsity soccer coach to play a game this evening. So that's a pretty cool menu that I get to choose from today.
And all in a suit coat.
Yeah, and all in a suit coat. So get to the restaurant. You'll see what other people are eating, and then you'll get to choose what you'd like to have from the menu. So there's a lot to do in education, and it's certainly not just limited to being in a classroom. And as my story just illustrated, but you won't know that if you don't get to the restaurant to begin with.
Really good point. I want you to keep rolling because you and I talked a couple of weeks ago, and you began rolling on a point that I hadn't. Frankly, I consider this stuff often, but I hadn't considered what you shared. We talked a little bit about career progression, and that a 20-year-old needs to talk and consider and look at career progression because, as you said, most going into teaching nowadays are not likely going to have a 30-year career in a fifth grade classroom or in an early childhood ed classroom. Do you recall that conversation? Do you mind elaborating
Vaguely.
on that a little?
I'll try to. I hope I tell you the same thing I told you before. The way that the educational system is set up, and by the system I mean the retirement system, the at the end of the day how you will end your career, it's different than when I started. It's going to take you folks longer to get to the end of your career than it has taken people in the past. So your career is going to take many different twists and turns, at least I hope it will, because if you start as a teacher in a classroom, and I'll use third grade as an example, if you start in a third grade classroom, the likelihood of you staying in that third grade classroom for 30 plus years to get to the magic retirement age is probably not very realistic. And the reason I say that is because the rigors of teaching in any classroom, for that matter, are enormous. The job requires an emotional input that is difficult to maintain for that number of years. So things will change. So be prepared for the change, be open for the change, and again, look around you for things that you see that will allow you an avenue to move from the classroom to something else. In all likelihood, you'll move, and I think I shared this when Chris and I talked, in all likelihood, you'll change grades. You may change subject matter. You may change from the classroom to a coach's position, and I don't mean athletically, I mean a coaching position with perhaps literacy or mathematics, and then back again to a classroom, and then maybe to administration, and then maybe from administration back to a classroom. But because the career progression is so long now, those changes are not only going to be necessary, they're going to be nearly required for you to maintain your mental health in the profession. So be open to that, and don't put yourself in a box to where you feel like you're going to be that third grade teacher for 30 plus years. Because quite honestly, if you're a really good third grade teacher, doing it for 30 years is going to be all but impossible in the new configuration of how education is working. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of what I told you?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
Thank goodness.
Tara, any good team starts with a good leader. Likely, and I'm partly recollecting way back when I was younger, likely there are those watching today or will be watching this who are saying, I just want to teach. I don't think I want, I don't want any of that principal stuff or vice principal stuff or counselor stuff. What would you say to them?
Well, I think my response really connects back to that career progression. I actually started as a social worker in the community, and continuing to reiterate Rick's quality of life, had the opportunity to move to a school setting and really found that to be a good balance for our family, getting to directly impact kids every day versus kind of in the community where the impact was a little bit different. And as you grow in age, your values change and your passions can sometimes shift as well. So I've served as a servant leader my entire career and really value that thankless at times giving, right, that we offer. But I feel, echoing Rick, that shift for me was important because I saw the impact that a leader can have on the system. So I was very grateful and still value my time when I spent as a counselor. In fact, if someone offered me a position, they say, would you go back? Absolutely. I loved what I did every day. But the impact holistically when you serve as a leader is so much more profound. So you can employ those system supports, those elements, those qualities we know that teachers and the people that work with teachers need to survive and thrive. And that's what really makes being a leader powerful. And at 17, you may feel differently, but again, as you move through life, things change.
Cool. We have a remarkable early childhood ed program here at Mid, and no commercial here, no pitch, I swear, but it's true. Much like our nursing program. I'm not like bragging, it's a remarkable program. I've spoken with Julie, you probably have too, Julie who runs our program, about this a number of times. But Amy, I want to ask you, I'm flabbergasted when all of the data, not most of it, all of the data shows that solid early childhood ed makes a monstrous difference 18 years later. Yet it remains not an oversight, but we don't put the energy and effort into it until lately. It seems like the state and the country is beginning to recognize that more. Can you touch on that briefly?
Sure, that is absolutely 100% true. I think one of the things that really called attention to that is during COVID, we looked at how many adults could not go to work and do their job because their children were at home, and their infants and toddlers were at home, their preschoolers were at home. And it was really kind of called into attention that child care in general was so important, and the quality of care that the child was receiving was so important. And so there is a lot of conversations happening at the state capitol level. In fact, a few weeks ago, I was there as part of a group. There's a conference for early childhood educators next week where thousands of individuals across the state of Michigan will come together to advocate for early childhood. And so it really is one of those things that we look at, that infant, toddler, preschool care is multifaceted because it also includes the families, and it allows for the opportunity to really create kind of a pairing, because oftentimes if someone is bringing their 6-month-old or 6-week-old child into care, they want to be involved as well. And so those teacher relationships really do happen. And that is starting to be seen more and more about how important early childhood education is, because when we are dropping off our youngest learners, we don't want to do that to just anybody. We want that to be with somebody who has an understanding of how a baby's brain is developing. And we want somebody to know not only how to plan an activity, but why that activity is important to move a child to their next level. And we also look at that as saying, you know what, if a society is going to run, if individuals are going to be able to get up and go to work, and they have a 2-year-old that they're going to need outside care for that. And I think even just as society has changed, where way back in the day it might have been that, okay, grandma or grandpa or an aunt or uncle or something like that is going to care for infants and toddlers. That's not necessarily the case. We're seeing individuals working much later on in their life. And so you might be a grandparent in your 50s and you're still working. So you don't have that option to necessarily have that family care. And that is also another reason to have those conversations, because unfortunately, yes. And if you are going into education, that early childhood education piece is what is probably going to be the least paid. However, because those conversations are happening at a state level, at a national level even, we want people to come aboard and really bring recognition to how important that age group is to be served.
Excellent. You want to add anything to
Yes, I think about, you talk, there's celebrity interviews or game shows, and people will say, what contributed to your success now? And people will often refer to my fourth grade teacher, or I had a science teacher who taught me to care. And I was, Rick, struck by your conversation where you met a former student in the grocery store with her child on her hip. And that child is impressionable. That child is learning the word teacher. And that child may realize, this is someone that my mom is feeling is really important. So as you mentioned, Amy, our youngest learners, they are absorbing so much. For us to be able to spend that time and provide that quality care, it's just paramount. I don't know why there's not more and more time, effort, and money spent on resources to enable that. Chris started talking about, MID. Obviously, I work at MID, so we have created partnerships with area high schools through our kind of early childhood development through the CTE and bringing them into having a college credit by the time they come to college. We have a new partnership with CMU, which is starting this fall, the Associates in Arts for Elementary Education. We have students who are doing our early childhood certificate and the program, whether they're working in a daycare setting or a pre-K setting. We have people who are going on to, teach elementary ed as well as secondary ed, or wanting to aspire to, I know people who want to become professors and get their PhDs. So starting it back as little sponges, when we're first born. I think of my coworkers also who have young children, and the quest for finding quality care where they can drop off their most precious loved one, and for 6 to 8 hours a day, and they don't want them just playing in a room with other kids with worn toys. They really want to see that education happening. They really want to have that care provided to them in the same way that they would provide to their own child. So it's the most really sacred opportunity you can have when you're entrusted to care for a little one, or provide assistance for any other human being, but especially starting with those formative years. I just think how valuable and just really honored it would be to be that kind of person, to provide that care for people.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you. Rick and Tara, here we go. I'm going to throw another curveball. No, it's not a curveball. I don't want to go here with this one, but I want to go here with this one. Oh. Yeah, because Julie often, when I ask her, Julie's my wife, when I ask her, I'm meeting with these remarkable folks tomorrow, what should I ask them? She often goes to the questions that I don't want to ask, but it's good. Great way to preface my question, right? There are two careers in my estimation that if one's not pretty convicted, almost 100% convicted, they probably ought not to go down that path. One being criminal justice, the other one being teaching. there are many reasons, and we've talked and touched on some of them, that students may be hesitant to commit to a path of teaching. But one that I get, and it's legitimate, and I can't empathize in any way whatsoever, because we were fortunate to grow up in a different era. I'm bulking us all in the same era. But safety is now an issue. And it seems to be an issue more so with education. What would you say to 217 and 18-year-olds? I don't know that you'd allay their fears, but how do you respond when someone says, that might be the reason I don't go into education?
Well, I would tell them that that's exactly the reason they should go into education. You know, the problem that we have, and this is something that I feel pretty strongly about. I have a background that's not important for this conversation that causes me to be passionate about this, but the problem that we have with schools being the targets of deranged individuals who wish to bring harm to others is an educational problem. And it has its roots in mental health issues, certainly, but the only way we'll solve this problem is when we try to educate ourselves out of it. We have to be willing to say what's wrong and where do you fix it. And you're not going to fix it by taking guns away from people. You're not going to fix it by giving more guns to people. It's not a gun issue one side or the other. It's an issue of education. It's an issue of our communities, of our society, valuing educating people at a level that causes these things to be much less frequently perpetrated than they are. So, and that education happens in the mental health field as well as in the classrooms in our school districts. So, what I would tell you is, don't be afraid. Be part of the solution. Get involved, become an educator, and work toward teaching people from the time that they're born in the daycares we've talked about earlier until they eventually leave our system, whether that's post-secondary or some other way through graduating high school. So it's an educational issue, and we are afraid more than ever because of what happens and has happened in our society, but it's a problem that we need to tackle head on, and we tackle it head on in the way that we're trained, and we are not trained as school safety officers. We're not trained to battle people in a close quarters situation in a school building, but we are trained to teach. So let's focus on what we're trained to do, and let's teach people to not be the kind of deranged sicko that perpetrates those heinous acts. And we can do that, but we have to be able to, first of all, face the issue as being an educational problem. And instead of saying that it's guns plus or minus, doesn't matter which side of the political side you fall, it's an educational problem. So let's attack it with the skills that we have, and let's teach people to be decent human beings, and we'll have far fewer of these problems.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think that was very passionately put, and I just echo Rick's comments. You want to impact people individually, then teaching is a profession for you. And every occupation has some challenges, and you're highlighting some that have come of late that I guess I would have never thought of when I entered the profession.
For sure.
Many decades ago. Creating a community of care is a critical role of anyone who works with kids every day. Sure. And Rick mentioned this, but just to emphasize, not only are we teaching kids stuff and that creativity and passion to learn, but we're also teaching them key developmental assets that can help them persist regardless of what challenges they have. Acknowledging that there's some that we have minimal impact on, and Rick mentioned mental health and things like that, but I'm talking about holistically. Within that classroom, you can teach a child how to set goals, how to have confidence, how to build positive self-esteem. All of those qualities are critical in cultivating an amazing human that will keep everyone in their community safe and also lift up others, whether it be through their occupational endeavors or perhaps volunteer efforts or whatever they may choose to do. But again, creating that community of care is critical, and as teachers, you have the most impact of any profession that I'm aware of to be able to deliver and create that environment daily for all the children that you interact with.
Wow, good stuff. Believe it or not, we're coming up on the end of this. It's been remarkable. I saved one of my favorite questions for next to last, and I don't want to misquote it, so here we go. Rick knows my son Jack, and Jack's a very bright young man, and there are a lot of bright young people on the other side of the camera, and I don't just mean bright intellectually. But I used to sort of kind of coax Jack towards, don't you want to go towards criminal justice? Because we need bright, good leaders in criminal justice. He's not, and that's okay. But here we go. Steve Jobs once said, if you want to make everybody happy, don't be a leader, go sell ice cream. Do those who recognize the importance of education, do those with similar frame of mind as each of you, are they listened to? Will the world ever listen to them? When the world is seemingly full of unrest, I'm comforted by the fact that there's a lot of bright people out there, like each of you, who can make an impact, like you're referencing. But I go back to my question. Will the world listen to these people? Do you expect, if I want to be involved in education, I can concurrently, that means at the same time, I can concurrently lead?
Well, I'll get us started. To be an effective leader, you have to have courage, and it's becoming more and more difficult in leadership roles to have that courage, because part of having courage is having a belief in what you think will drive the organization forward, and having convictions upon which those beliefs are built upon. But in today's society, it doesn't matter what your convictions are, you're hammered on for them, right? That's what's going on. It doesn't make any difference. It's not a liberal or a conservative issue or a Democrat or Republican issue, but it makes no difference what your convictions as a leader might be. You're going to be beaten over the head with your very own convictions. That's the world that we live in right now as leaders. So you're going to have courage to take that beating without giving up on your convictions. Don't change your mind just because someone is throttling you over what you believe is right. Stick to what you believe is right and press forward. If the organization that you're leading doesn't share your convictions, leave. Go find an organization that does. That's what you have to do to be an effective leader in this climate that we have right now. So although it's challenging, and although it's very difficult right now to lead for those reasons, there's no better time to lead. Because it's easy to lead when you don't have those challenges. It's difficult to lead when you do. And leaders get satisfaction not from the money that they take home. Leaders get satisfaction internally from when they've made an impact on the organization and the people that the organization then serves. So what better way to have your internal person receive gratification for a job well done than to be a leader and succeed in what is probably inarguably one of the most difficult times to lead than right now. So if you're thinking about becoming a teacher leader or becoming a leader outside of teaching, as Tara and I have done and others, now's the best time to do it, because the potential for satisfaction in here has never been greater. Now, the potential to be beaten over the head for your convictions has never been greater as well.
I think one of my biggest lessons I learned when I was a young adult was that you can live your life as honorably or with integrity or, with however you want to live it, as truly as authentically, but someone else can say something else about you that's completely the opposite. So that was a big surprise to me. I, used to think that oh no, justice always prevails, but that's not always the case. And I think in terms of leadership, a lot of times we think of that means boss, manager, doctor, president, but I can be a leader to a student one-on-one in my office. I can be a leader to my young nieces or nephews, or if you're a parapro, if you're a daycare provider, you can just be in that quiet one-on-one leadership mode with that individual, modeling, caring, educating, and helping them become their most true and authentic self. And I think, as far as being a leader, that's open to anybody, whatever your job title might be.
I think too, with leadership, it is about showing up through the hard times, through the easy times, but continuing to show up. And I think the other part that goes along with it is inspiring and inspiration. You don't know who is looking at you and saying, "Oh, that is a really good point." You can change the thought of someone by continuing to show up and have your own convictions and living authentically. I think really one of the things that we look at with leaders is they're willing to listen. They're willing to hear people out, but they're still willing to be authentic to themselves and take whatever their thought process is and think things through in a way and continue to inspire other people to do the same thing. And so I believe that anybody can be a leader. I think absolutely what you said before about, we used to think that leadership was the title that you held, and we now know differently that leading an authentic life that has inspiration with whatever you do is really the best leader that you can be.
Anything?
Well, I think everyone brought a really amazing points. I think just to reiterate the emphasis that leadership is such a subjective term. In fact, I often joke, and I think I'm in good company, that if I'm gone from the building, no one cares. But if the secretary is gone, you better look out. Because of what they do every day has such a dramatic impact on the functionality of how the building runs and operates. Same thing as Rick echoed with teaching. Teachers are leaders every day, and emulating the qualities that the panelists described are critical. Being humble and listening is what leaders do best. Understanding you're not the smartest one in the room, and being able to live authentically through those principles. And also going back to a point I made earlier, understanding what your own values are, because there will be a lot of conflicts as in any type of interpersonal interaction, and they're all centered on what you value, and that doesn't mean that you're right and they're wrong, right? Mm-hmm. Or that it's fair or not, but it's important to recognize that only through doing some of the elements the other panelists described are you going to truly understand where someone else is coming from, and then that helps within the classroom and within the school move the culture forward to something positive that despite discourse people can wrap their brains around and get behind and passionately lift up.
Tara, Rick and I are far from the smartest ones in the room today. Okay, we've got just a few minutes left, so I'm going to kind of throw it out there. What final words do you have for largely a number of 17 and 18-year-olds that are considering education in some form? Any particular order? Keep it succinct.
Try, explore, be curious, check it out, rule it out, cross it off your list, or put it in one column or another.
I was going to say, you can ask any individual, no matter of their background, no matter where they live, socioeconomic status, anything. You can ask any individual to tell you about their educational experience. And though it may look different, every single person has had an educational experience. And there's no other career out there that is that. So know that by joining the education world, you are joining careers with millions of other people, and you are shaping an experience for an individual that every single person will have one. So that is important, and that's also very powerful.
Yeah, that's tough to follow. Those sentiments, and including by someone who's always so well spoken. I guess I just echo what's already been stated. Education gives you the opportunity to serve as a passionate advocate every day. Now, what the advocacy looks like, feels like, sounds like is different depending on which lane you're in, whether you're in the business office down to working directly with kiddos. But the impact is profound regardless of what department you land. I like Judy's comment to just explore and find what fits right for you, and what fits today may look different 5, 10, 15 years from now. But just think about the power that you're going to have in the lives of those that you touch, or supporting the people that touch those lives. And I can't think of a more fulfilling job than working side by side with those advocates every day.
Yeah, I think that along the lines with what everybody else said, and this is not meant to disparage any other job in the world, but I'm an educator, so I'm gonna come with that bias, certainly. But nobody ever sat around in a conversation and said, my life was changed by my dentist, or my life took a turn for the better, and just I really found myself after visiting with my accountant. You know, and again, nothing against any of those other jobs, but I'll bet 90% of the people on the planet would tell you that their life was impacted by a teacher through their educational experience. So if you're looking to have an impact on people, there's no better job to do that in.
Yeah, it was. Phew. Again, home run derby. Wow. Okay. I expect that this hour has been as significant for you as it has been for me. Just a couple of quick final thoughts. Young ladies, I hope you note there are 4 leaders sitting up here, and I'm not even going to discern between their genders. Keep that part in mind. Also, we've had this roundtable series. We've been honored to host this since November, and this one has been remarkable, truly. This is our last one for the year. We're proud at Mid-Michigan College to remain and serve as our community's college, and will happily continue to do so. And really glad that you've joined us here. One last thought. Likely, maybe, somewhere in the darkest corner of your mind or the quietest moment of your life, you might occasionally, rarely, hopefully never, think, I don't know that anybody really cares about my thoughts, or where I hope to go, or what's going on in my world. That's not the case, and I want to be sure you understand that from here on forward. You can never really say that, because you've got at least one in that classroom with you. Okay? So before you leave, before you lay your head on your pillow tonight, thank those people that are involved with your education. And if you can get the blessing to be part of that too, good for you. Thanks for being brave to do so.
Chris, can I interrupt you for just
Please.
a second? And this I can do this because I don't work for Mid-Michigan College, okay? But I need to say this, and I thought about it a lot before I came here. I am a Mid-Michigan community college, and I say community college because that's what it was when I was there. I am an alumni, so I was one day, many moons ago, I was where you are. Now, there weren't cameras like this back then, but I went to Mid-Michigan Community College on my educational journey toward becoming an educator. So I was right where you are, and you are in no better hands than where you are right now with Mid. And I'm not saying that because I'm a paid person or anything. I'm not. But I'm finishing my career in education, and I owe that career to my start, which happened at Mid-Michigan College many years ago. So for all of you that are on the other side of that camera, you're in the right spot to start this journey.
Thank you for that. Okay. On that note, we're going to close this one. Again, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you being part of this. And do well with all of it. Stay healthy.